some history on street racing.
That way the kids don't have any reason to be on the public streets.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the AARA web series. My name is Chris Harris. I have my partner, Sinclair Gordon, and we are here with, there's so many things I could say about this gentleman. He is a pioneer, a trailblazer. He has fought through so many unsurmountable odds. He was, his list is first is absolutely amazing. Let me read this. The first African-American to race in NASCAR's Busch Series, the first to participate in the Nextel Cup and win the pole in the Craftsman Truck Series. He was the first to win the Grand Am race, the first black driver and Truck Series driver, but most importantly, and you know, when you get on the cereal boxes when you really made it, first Truck Series driver, Honey Nut Cheerios. Everybody, it is my honor and Sinclair's honor to introduce you to the legendary Bill Lester.
Hey, fellas, what's happening?
What is going on?
We're going to kick it for a minute, but man, I got to correct you on a couple of those things because when you talk about, well, first of all, you are correct, but when you say NASCAR Busch Series, people are going to look at you like deer in the headlights, even those that have some appreciation for NASCAR, because it hasn't been the Busch Series for a while, man. NASCAR has been like a revolving door of sponsors, so it's now called the Xfinity Series, and that's
Xfinity Series now.
The Cup Series, which is not the Nextel Cup Series anymore, back when I was running in the mid-2000s, but it's just the Cup Series because they actually don't even have a title sponsor. So they just call it the Cup Series. NASCAR has been struggling so much with their numbers and trying to make sure that they stay relevant and afloat that sponsors have been like having a hard time justifying the spend to be the exclusive entitlement sponsor for the series. So when I ran in, what you also indicated was the Craftsman Truck Series. That's now called the Gander Outdoor Truck Series, which is like Camping World. Now the Xfinity Series, and what was the Nextel Cup Series is just called the Cup Series, man. Watch, a couple years from now, they'll have all two new names again. But anyway, I just wanted your viewers to know when they're like, what do you, Craftsman Truck? I haven't heard of that. I've heard Gander Outdoor Truck Series. Busch Series, what's that? I heard of Xfinity Series and Nextel. No, you mean the Cup Series. So anyway, man, I just wanted to say
what's sad is that you really made me realize how old I really am because I
remember
these series clear. Like that's all familiar to me. These new names you're saying, I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, that shows you how old I am, brother. You still young, living well. I'm just out here just trying to make it.
Oh boy.
So I guess that kind of brings us up to our first question. Why NASCAR? Everybody knows that NASCAR has a very strong heritage in the South, and it's very Americana, and especially in the Southeast. Why out of all series? Because I know that you have a background in SCCA, coming from road racing. Why NASCAR?
Yeah, exactly. Let me tell you, fellas, I would have never thought that NASCAR would be the place where I made a name for myself. I thought it would be either in sports cars, road racing, or IndyCar, open wheel racing, like the Indy 500, or sports car, like the 24 hours of Le Mans in France, or 24 hours of Daytona here in the States, in Florida. I had no interest in NASCAR growing up. My father took me to a race when I was just shy of 8 years old, and that was a sports car race in Northern California. But I had seen NASCAR racing on TV on ABC's Wild World of Sports. Okay, I'm dating myself. And I would see all these Confederate flags just proudly blowing in the breeze. And I would hear these drivers jump out of their cars and talk to the interviewer, talk about McCall, Tars, Rolf, and, and I was like, what? So I grew up, like I said, in Northern California. So the Southeast was completely just foreign to me, right? I just had a hard time understanding what these guys were saying. I didn't like the environment in terms of the Confederate flags. And there were tons of them. There were more Confederate flags than US flags, right? Than American flags. And I just thought it was crazy to run around in a circle on an oval, trying to stay off of a concrete wall at 200 miles an hour. I was like, wait a minute, racing is like the extension of what you do on the street, right? You upshift, you downshift, you accelerate, you brake, but most importantly, you turn right and you turn left. You just always turn left, right? You turn right, you turn left. So watching these guys running around in a fishbowl, I was like, didn't look like me, didn't sound like me, had an environment that I just could not embrace. I would have never thought in a million years I'd wind up in NASCAR. But lo and behold, sure enough, like you guys said, I show up in NASCAR, opportunities present themselves, and I make a name for myself. But I would have never thought that that would be, where I would wind up.
Speaking of making a name for yourself, so your story and your start is the most unconventional way ever, because typically guys who are in the sport and become professionals, they start out from pretty much the youngest opportunity available and live their life through the sport and become the pro. But you graduated from UC Berkeley, you were working for Hewlett Packard. I mean, you were doing all right and racing and IMSA and NCCA on the side, and then you decided, you know what, I want to go pro. And that is, I mean, one, it's amazing the fact that while you're working at Hewlett Packard, you're still Rookie of the Year and you're doing these amazing things. But how was that decision that you decided to leave this career, right? There's people who strive to get to that point just with Hewlett Packard and never do it. And you decide, I'm going to leave this and put my abilities and what I believe I can do on the line to go pro, which regardless of whatever color you are, is a difficult feat to do it. But then to be African-American in the early 80s, in the 70s, 80s, and everything that you have to deal with, and to do that, I mean, please tell me like that thought process.
Oh, man, you covered a whole lot of ground. Where do I start? Yeah, it was with my wife's blessing and support that I was able to leave a successful job by everybody's definition but my own. I define success as happiness, and I was miserable doing what I was doing working in corporate America. Now, don't let me, talk bad about the high-tech industry. I think the high-tech sector and having a technical background is key and paramount in this day and age. But it just wasn't my calling. It was my foundation to do what I really wanted to do. I wanted to be a race car driver from a very young age. But my parents are like, well, I hope you get a job that allows you to be able to accomplish that goal, because, we don't race. We know nothing about racing. We weren't born in the sport. We don't have their last name. We don't know how to get from A to B as far as racing is concerned. We know how to, direct you in terms of, okay, here's a stick and a ball and, go out and play with your friends, play some football, baseball, basketball, whatever. But racing was completely foreign and, unknown to my folks. Mm-hmm. And they knew just how expensive it was to be able to pursue it. And they're like, we support you in doing it, but we're not going to be able to provide you with that capability of doing it. And what I mean by that is that the common denominator amongst most drivers is that they start at a very young age, kind of like you said. They start either in a go-kart when they're in their single-digit years, or maybe a quarter midget if they want to go over track racing. Go-kart if you want to road race, because go-karting, or karting as we call it, typically is turning right and turning left on a paved track. Quarter midgets are what kids do when they want to just turn in a circle, turn left on dirt, and then maybe get to NASCAR. I didn't have that opportunity. I didn't have that, springboard that most of these drivers typically start out with and carries them to their professional level. My father took me to this race. That set the hook. I knew I wanted to be a race car driver, but that's as far as it went, right? So, here I am, 37 years of age, working at Hewlett Packard, successful, again, by everybody's definition but my own, six-figure, income, managing a couple dozen software development engineers. I mean, I had it made, right? But I was miserable because I wasn't doing what I felt I was given a calling to do. I wasn't living my gift and my truth. And I was being just disingenuous to myself and even to the people that I was managing, because as soon as I left the 8 to 5, I was thinking about racing. I was thinking about, racing amateur on the weekend in SCCA, or pursuing sponsorships to maybe turn pro or whatever. And I couldn't do both of these things successfully. My major priority was the job, right? The professional corporate job. But I wanted my real priority to be racing. And it's with my wife's blessing and support that she said, listen, hon, you're not getting any younger and you're not getting any easier to live with. Go out there and see if you can make this dream of yours a reality, or say that you gave it your best shot and it just wasn't meant to be. So
So
for 3
she,
years.
you were driving her crazy. She said, "Get out the house." That's pretty much
yeah.
how it happened.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. She's like, you come home miserable, you're kicking the dog. We don't even have a dog. So I was just, it was not a good look. And so I considered that I was gainfully unemployed for about 3 years, because from the time I was 37 to the time I was 40, when I got my break in the truck series, I was pursuing that dream. I was, chasing it. I was, meeting people. I was networking. I was doing everything I could to get an opportunity to prove that I could do this, because corporate America is so important in terms of sponsorship and your ability to succeed in motorsports. People don't realize how much it costs to race. It's at the cup level, an $18-20 million proposition a year. You got to bring that sort of sponsorship, because race teams don't provide that anymore. They provide the infrastructure, but the drivers nowadays, by and large, they provide the checkbook as well as their wallet. It's crazy. It's like telling LeBron James, man, you got great talent. You can jump out of the gym. You can dribble behind your back, over whatever. You got major skills. Now bring $20 million. You could play on our team. That's kind of how it is nowadays. It's just insane. But anyway, so you've got to be able to have the opportunity to pursue that full time, full fledged, give it your all. And that's what I was able to do. And it was, with the fact that I was in the the audience, essentially. I was in the room that I got this opportunity to test with the Dodge program and Bobby Hamilton Racing, and was able to get this Dodge program to race in the truck series. But yeah, I mean, I accomplished something at 40 years of age that most people, one, would be afraid to do, because they're out of their comfort zone. They're not going to change their career path at 40 years, 37 years of age, whatever. Something where they weren't guaranteed they were going to make it in. They didn't know. I didn't know whether or not I was going to survive. I didn't know whether or not after 3 years, because that's how much my wife and I gave this ambition of mine before I would have to possibly turn back to the realities of going back to corporate America. I didn't know if I was going to make it, but I believed in myself, but there were no guarantees. And I still took that leap of faith. And that's important. If you believe in yourself, you have to take that leap of faith. You have to, basically just absorb yourself into what it is you're trying to pursue, give it your all. Because you can't half step, especially when you're talking about a platform in NASCAR where I'm one of 4 black drivers to race in NASCAR's top division, the Cup Series, in the last 60 years. There was Wendell Scott, Willie T. Ribbs, myself, and Bubba Wallace. I mean, you talk about a very exclusive club. 4 brothers in the last 60 years. Think about that. They only start 40 on Sunday.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's not as if it's a stick and ball team where you have lots of players on the team. You got 40 cars that start the race. So it's already exclusive. And then you're talking about the chances of one of us being able to make it in there. That even increases the odds exponentially, because they, at one point, just did not want us to be there. They considered that their domain. It's one of the few things that they can excel at and that we haven't taken over, because you know how we do. That's a level playing field and it's over. That's it, by and
Crack
large.
that door open and it's go time.
Absolutely, level the playing field and it's on. The way they can keep it from being level is that the folks that make the decisions in corporate America don't look like you and me, by and large. That's the problem. I'm more disappointed in the shortcomings of corporate America and their diversity and inclusion discussions than I am really in just about anything else. It's really up to corporate America to step up and make opportunities available to everybody so that we can all take advantage of motorsports, not just NASCAR, but just motorsports in general. I mean, you look at the landscape in, open wheel racing. There's nobody, black in open wheel racing now. There was, after Willie T. Ribbs, George Mack. He was the next brother. There only been 2 brothers that raced in the Indy 500, Willie T. Ribbs and George Mack. And George Mack was late 1990s, I think.
It's over 20 years, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's been more than a minute since we've been behind the wheel of an Indy car. You look at sports car racing, it's few and far in between. There's a guy who's doing really well right now on the scene, Ernie Francis, who's kicking butt and taking names. But he's still in the Trans Am series, which is, he's a big fish in a small pond. He needs to be over there in IMSA. He needs to be at the place where the real notoriety and opportunity and corporate dollars and all that kind of stuff are being played with. He's out there doing extremely well. Don't let me just, take anything away from him. I think the world of him and his ability. I would just like to see corporate America give him the financial support to allow him to race with these other guys in IMSA, where the corporate dollars are really coming through. Most of the guys that are over in SCCA Trans Am are typically, weekend warriors that have a lot of money and wherewithal. And his budget in Trans Am pales by comparison to what an IMSA prototype budget is. He should be driving an IMSA, Daytona prototype, or what's called DPI right now. That's the name of the series, the name of the class, DPI. He should be in a DPI car, without question. But, again, I'm sure he's been knocking on the doors. I've talked to him down in Florida, which is where he is.
Yep.
And, I just know how hard he's scrapping and scraping and trying to make things happen. It is hard. It is hard to break through, and that's how they are able to control the playing field. Until we got the same access to capital as they have, we're going to struggle. And I hate it. And, you talk about these, you hear these companies talking about diversity and inclusion, and they're willing to write that check for, 4 figures, 5 figures, maybe 6 figures.
Yes.
But when you talk about 7 and 8 figures, all of a sudden you become mainstream marketing, and you're up against everybody from stick and ball sports to, pro beach volleyball to, extreme, whatever, this, that, and the other, and so how do you differentiate yourself from all those other folks and all those other opportunities that corporate America can gravitate toward? It's extremely difficult, because at the end of the day, those decision makers are typically trying to go with the tried and the true, especially in this day and age.
They don't take a chance.
They're risk averse. They're extremely risk averse. They're not trying to put their neck out, because, put your neck out and it doesn't work. Guess what happens?
Exactly.
But they're following this blueprint from like 1902 that they want to continue to use this structure and think that's the way you do business now, and it's not. And that's why you and I have spoken, and Sinclair, him and I, this is a big reason why we created this organization.
Exactly.
Because representation is massive. To be able to have people that look like you and be in various important pieces in corporate structure, it changes the complete narrative. And people talk about, oh, Black Lives Matter is anti this, and no, it's not. And I think you said it in the interview, it's like Black Lives Matter 2. Maybe we should have said 2, so you guys could get it clearer that we just want what everybody else is getting, and the opportunity. Just affirmative action. People complain why we have affirmative action, but don't really think about why we need it in the first place. It's kind of like the conversations are so skewed.
It's bizarre.
You're absolutely right, man. The whole Black Lives Matter, they've got it completely twisted. I mean, they're acting like it's, some elitist organization, and, we're just, trying to be, I don't know what it is they're thinking, because I don't live in their skin. But the bottom line is, they don't understand that all we want is equality. All this, police profiling and racial disparity and it's ridiculous. And we're not taking it anymore. We're not going to lie down. We're not going to take it. Enough is enough. And we're not going away. I think they probably thought, oh, this is just blow over like, the next storm. But no, it's here to stay. There will be change. I'm hoping there's going to be some change come November, but we don't know what's going to go on there. But, it's a matter of, we should all be treated equally. We should all be looked at, and it's all should be about the content of our character, not the color of our skin. Period.
Exactly.
And it's just weird that, while there are people who are like that, of all colors, that can look at individuals and say, yes, I don't care what you look like, what you like to do in your bedroom, you can drive, come to my team. But it seems at the top of the corporate structure is not like that. There's too many special interests and things that are going on. Like you said, they just want to stick to this antiquated blueprint, and then just keep people out. And people like you with voices that are accomplished, and this is paying it forward. And I can't just speak enough about you, but the work that you're doing and using your voice to the platform, you're just not the person who's going in line and just trying to, stay in line to keep both sides happy. You're like, no, this is what I went through the sport. I didn't have the platform that's available now. This is a real thing, and this crap needs to change. And all you guys that are trying to come up, this is how you do it, and this is how we try and get you there. Yeah. It's needed. So huge.
I just want to touch point on what Bill was saying with the corporate sponsors and everything like that, because we know that racing is essentially a money game. It's not necessarily who has the best talent. It's all about how much money can you bring to the table when it comes down to racing. So how was that? Like late 90s, early 2000s, you're trying to go to sponsors and everything. Everybody knows that when you're a sponsor, you're basically the poster child for that demographic. How was that going to that boardroom and just saying, hey, I'm a black 40-year-old man and I want to race?
Man, it's tough. It was no picnic whatsoever. I actually know for a fact that I've lost some sponsorship opportunities because the company finally got to see what I looked like.
Wow.
And all of a sudden the opportunity went away. Yeah, because of how I present myself, and I guess, people have told me how I sound and how I come across, they didn't anticipate they were talking to a black man. Exactly. Oh, he's well-spoken, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah,
So,
oh my God.
Like there's just one stamp that means black and that's it, right?
man, I'm telling you, I could see, just by talking to these folks on the phone, I could almost hear their jaws drop and whatnot once they found out I was black and that sort of thing. And it's tough, man, because like you said, when I was going through the ranks of getting sponsorship and all that kind of stuff, it was very much a country club environment in the C-suite. That's all there was to it, man. I mean, they were looking out for their own. They were looking out for each other. They weren't trying to buck the ship. They weren't trying to make change. It was the tried and true. It's just really hard because we've always been at a deficit, and trying to make up that, a deficit is almost impossible. You can't. We've broken through, in the corporate ranks, at the top levels in a few areas, but not enough. And in the areas that we've broken through, such as, CEO and, president and stuff like that, they haven't been typically the right company that's going to benefit from an exposure in NASCAR or motorsports or whatever. They're not the right, product company or the right service company or whatever, right? Some of like pharmaceuticals and stuff like that. And, these pharmaceutical companies with the brands they have may not, be able to advertise effectively on a race car. There are all sorts of different scenarios, but for whatever reason, there's very few sponsors that are in the position to afford to get involved at a major league level in motorsports. And those few sponsors that are out there, man, they are browbeat to death by other motorsports teams and, whatever it is that knows that they're in a position to help them out, help their organization or team out. These companies are getting 50, 70 sponsorship proposals a day. How they differentiate, the ones that make sense from the ones that are just, why we even consider this? Here's the round basket. By and large, the way they do that is through relationships. Relationships are so key. If you're coming in cold off the street and trying to get a corporate sponsorship, it's darn near impossible. The shotgun approach doesn't work. You got to have somebody or know somebody who's in an influential position to pull the coattail of that CEO or president or, chief marketing officer or, vice president of marketing so that they accept and, they accept your proposal and take a look
Even
at it.
look at it, let alone accept
look
it.
at it. Exactly. Before even accepting, just look at it. They take it, that sort of thing. Because most of them don't even get to see the light of day. So let me tell you, man, motorsports is like any other professional sports in 3 ways. It's politics first, business second, and sport third. What do I mean by that? Politics is the ability to be in the room, to be in a position to be considered. Okay, that's the politics. That's the kissing babies. That's the handshakes. That's, okay, you've been introduced to somebody who's an influencer or a decision maker by somebody that person knows, right? That's the politics of the sport. That's the ripping and grinning and, coming off looking right, whatever. Okay, you pass square one. Then comes the business of the sport. Then comes the justification as to why company ABC should be spending $18 to $20 million of their hard-earned marketing dollars on your program. That's the business aspect of it. Why should we be spending this money here when we can do this, that, and the other, and all these other different things? Why are we going to spend it on you? Justify that. Once you're successful and able to do that, then comes the sport. Then you actually get to don your helmet, jump into the car, and go racing. And I never in a million years would have thought that those 2 key aspects before the sport, would have been the hardest things about racing professionally. But that is definitely what the case is. If I could impart anything on somebody who wants to be like a professional race car driver, politics first, business second, sport third. You have to be in the room. You have to be able to justify it. And then you get to put that helmet on and do your thing. I thought the hard part about racing was actual racing, the competition. I thought it's, knowing when to pass, where to pass, how to pass, how fast you can go without overstepping your bounds and all that. That's the easy part.
This is a yearly process, which is the crazy thing. It's like as soon as the racing season is over, it's like it starts all over again.
No. Before the racing season's over, corporate America makes their decisions in the September-October timeframe.
Yeah,
and the racing season goes,
that's right.
if you're NASCAR, through November. So you, by August, are getting those proposals out so that by September, October, they're in the consideration set of that company. If you wait till after the racing season's over, November, end of November, Thanksgiving, it's over. They've already made their decisions for the following year. So you're never relaxed about sponsorship. Huh?
I said, and then you have to go out and race.
Exactly. So, throughout my whole career, I never had a multi-year deal. Every year I had to prove myself that I belonged in the seat and could stay in the seat. It was crazy. There's no sleep. There's no rest for the weary. It was always, making sure that you got the best out of your team and your equipment on the track, but also making sure that you met everybody you could, everybody who showed an interest in the sport, everybody who was supportive of you, whatever the case is, because even if they couldn't open the door, maybe they knew somebody who could open the door, right? It's just, he's one iteration from the guy I need to know, or two iterations. It's crazy, man. I'm exhausted talking about it.
I'm exhausted just hearing about it. Like that, the trials and tribulations that you have to go through just to be able to sit in a race car. I don't even know how to best describe it. Like it's so hard, and especially when it comes down to a professional level, that's why you only see, like you said previously, is like when it comes to racing, you only see those 40 cars, and nobody really understands what it takes to be on that stage. It's hard to kind of just grasp everything because, being Black, everybody wants to put a ball in your hand. It's either a football, baseball, basketball, something. And then that's the complete adverse of motorsports because, when you're playing basketball or baseball or football or something like that, you can get scouted and then, you're kind of like on that trajectory to become a pro. But you do the politics later when you're kissing the babies and everything else. That's when you're already in the league and you're just trying to basically promote yourself further up by getting those deals. But in motorsports, it's upside down. You have to be able to get there first, and then you can get into the race car. And it's so bizarre, and at the same time, it's discouraging at the same, because being Black, that you only have a certain appeal, and not everybody's really interested in hearing you in the first place just because of what you look like. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the hardest part to kind of get over.
Well, man, there's so many aspects of it. We could talk forever, but I'll just add this other layer on top of what you were just saying, is that even when I got to NASCAR, I was booed before driver introductions at certain tracks for no reason whatsoever. No reason, just the color of my skin. It's like, it is the most isolated type of environment you can be in. You don't know these other guys that you're competing with. At least I don't, because I don't come from NASCAR. I didn't grow up in the Southeast. Most NASCAR drivers say the thing that they all have in common is that they grew up on dirt. I've never been to a dirt track to even observe a race. I don't know what dirt is, except something, you step in when you're walking around. But these guys all knew each other. They all grew up in North Carolina or around that area, Virginia, the Southeast. They all kind of knew what they were doing in late models growing up. Well, first of all, it was like Bandoleros, Legends, late models, K&N series. I came from road racing sports cars straight to the truck series. One of the three top NASCAR touring divisions, national touring divisions. You have to go through so many rungs of the ladder typically before you show up on the truck series scene. I skipped all that. So here I am showing up, coming out basically out of nowhere. They were looking like, who the heck is this, right? So it was almost like Days of Thunder where Tom Cruise rolls in on his motorcycle, right, for that test. And he's like, oh yeah, he's been racing these Indy cars, well, he can't drive a stock car, blah, blah, blah. Oh, that's kind of how they looked at me when I showed up, because nobody knew who Bill Lester was, because if you're in the Southeast and you're good, you get a reputation. People know, they talk, they see who's out there, what's going on. But me road racing, you know, sports cars, they're not concerned about sports car racing. So all of a sudden here I show up. And trust me when I say I was not embraced. I mean, it's like, oh, he didn't pay his dues. Why is he here? Blah, blah, blah. And I'll tell you, one of the most uncomfortable environments at the track is right before driver introductions. Not during the introductions themselves where I get booed, but before the driver introductions, when you're behind the stage that you have to walk across, and all the drivers are there kind of socializing with each other. Because I don't know these guys. We have nothing in common. You know, I don't hunt. I don't fish. I didn't grow up in the Southeast. I don't, you know, do the things that they typically do for relaxation. They all pretty much live right off Lake Norman in North Carolina in Mooresville. You know, when I came to the Southeast to race NASCAR, I settled myself in Atlanta. You know, if I'm going to come all the way across country, I'm going to be in the biggest metropolitan city that I can be in and feel comfortable in. I want, you know, diversity. I want culture. I don't want to be out there in the sticks, you know, looking over my shoulder at, you know, somebody who's strapped, because, you know, I've never shot a gun in my life. So these guys, a lot of these guys do. So needless to say, you know, they were looking at me and, you know, I'm like kind of, you know, hey, how you doing? But I mean, it was just nervous, uncomfortable answer, because I have nothing in common with these guys. But I will say, before I was all said and done, they respected me because they knew I had the talent and I deserved to be there. I didn't come up the way they came up, you know. I came up real late and I came from a whole different discipline of racing, but I made it and they respected that because I could hold my own. Like you said, pole positions in the truck series, first, you know, black one to get one in the truck series, back-to-back pole positions. A few years later in another truck series, a couple of truck series events, you know, I mean, leading races, you know, at Daytona, I led races. You know, so they knew I could get the job done, I could do it, but the playing field was never level, you know, but they respected me. They knew what I was up against. I can't tell you how many people since I've been done with my career have told me, man, Bill, if you had, you know, everything that these other guys had and, you know, all the latest parts and pieces and blah, 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 I wonder what you would have been able to accomplish. Who knows, man? It's water under the bridge. All I can say is I took advantage of every opportunity that was provided to me. I represented myself to the best of my ability and the best of, you know, representing us, you know, so I wasn't gonna be out there looking like Boo Boo the Fool, acting like they expect us to act, right?
Yeah.
What was gonna happen, you know?
Yeah.
I always carried myself upright, you know, just dressed appropriately attired, not sagging, nothing like that, none of that garbage, you know, I mean, it's conducted, you know, myself such that they can understand clearly what I'm saying. I'm struggling to understand what they're saying half the time. Because, you know, it's a very blue collar environment. You guys know that.
Yeah.
NASCAR is very blue collar. You know, a lot of these guys are your mechanics that you trust your life with at 180, 190 miles an hour, didn't finish high school. You know, they grow up as mechanics, wrenching at shops and hoping that they can get to a professional shop so they can be a mechanic or, you know, a crew member. You know, they don't have to be necessarily a mechanic, but jack man or, you know, tire changer, whatever the case is, you know. So, man, the stories go on and on.
Did you understand, and this is more of your thought process, right? I feel like I can't put myself in the shoes, but I'm like, my favorite athlete of any sport of all time is Muhammad Ali. Just understanding kind of what he went through and just watching his fights and listening to his crazy interviews, but it's more of his psyche. Did you understand at the time? And correct me if I'm wrong, you're passionate about racing. You didn't do this to become the first black driver. You did this because you wanted to win and you wanted to follow your dream of being a professional racer. And you did it and accomplished it at the highest level. But did you understand the gravity of your position, like as you were going through it? Because, you know, sometimes we accomplish things in life and while we're doing it, we don't really, especially when you're up against so much, you don't sit back and smell your own roses, right? You just kind of go on to the next thing. So at the time, did you understand, hustler, yes. Did you understand like the gravity of your accomplishments at the time?
You know what, when it was brought to me, I didn't, like you said, I didn't really take time to, you know, smell the roses. You often hear people say it's all about the journey, not the destination. For me, it was always about the destination. I got to get there. I got to get there. And I did not take time to really enjoy the journey. You know, I'm writing a motivational memoir right now called Winning in Reverse. And it's winning in reverse because I did everything pretty much atypical from what a regular professional race car driver would do. They would start out
At
really
least.
young, go through the ranks and all that kind of stuff. Here I am falling out of bed at 37 years old and coming on the scene at 40 and racing till I was 50, And my last competition was in karting, believe it or not. In 2012, at the age of 50, I'm racing over, representing Team USA, an international karting competition in Portimao, Portugal. So
Wow.
I did everything virtually in reverse. I started out in a big full-size car in SCCA racing at 21, 22 years old.
You're the Black Benjamin Button.
I aged in reverse. I'm Benjamin Button. So that's why it's winning in reverse, because I feel I won. I lived my dream. I did what it is I was given a gift to do. Didn't take no for an answer. Didn't become afraid to take a chance. Got out of my comfort zone. All sorts of things that are necessary to be successful. But at the end of the day, finally got to go karting, So it's a memoir that I think a lot of people that are like pivoting in life now, especially with COVID and what's going on now, can relate to. I think people that are afraid to, that are risk averse, afraid to do something different, can take stock in. I just think it's something that a lot of people can get, a lot of, advantage out of. And it appeals to, just about everybody, but specifically African Americans and race fans. My backdrop to my story is my racing career. That's where I basically share all the things that I've learned. It's basically 8 keys to my success. I identify 8 keys, and throughout each chapter, I harken back on how each one of these things had played a role in my success of living my dream. So I'm excited about that. That comes out February 2nd. So that'll be coming out shortly. And
You guys can go get it now. I'm sorry to interrupt. You guys can get it now. I actually pre-ordered it on Amazon, so it's up there, and every other bookstore that you could possibly get it on. I saw it on there too. So Winning in Reverse, go on there right now and get it. I'm super excited to read it.
I appreciate that, Chris. I think, a lot of people are going to take a lot from it. And when you guys talked about, or we talked about smelling the roses. When I was hustling, it's like my theme song was "Every Day I'm Hustling." I just never took time to step back and, just go, man, I've accomplished this. I got Honey Nut Cheerios cereal box, pole positions, blah, 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 leading races. It was, man, how do I get to perform better at my next race? How do I get to be in front of this sponsor or this person who can represent the sponsorship? It was always hustling. There's never, a moment of relaxation and rest and getting to the airport so I could catch that flight to get to that track. It was, just getting to a sponsor obligation, that sort of thing. Speaking to customers or guests or employees or whatever the case is. I mean, it was always just hustling. And so now that I've written this memoir, I can actually take that step back, take that breath, and see kind of what my career was like. And, now it's kind of like I'm going, yeah, I guess I did accomplish a thing or two.
Thing or two, right? And this is why we have this platform, and me and Sinclair talk about this so much, is because your story is such a rare story, and it's a story that you've gotten to the pinnacle of a sport that people like us don't get to. And it's kind of segueing into the next point I want to make, is that I've been lucky enough with some of my business endeavors that I have a really good stronghold on the age group of like 18 to 24 in the drag racing sector, in the drifting sector. And then I get a lot of questions sometimes like, hey, Chris, how can I transition my car from the drag strip to the road course to do time attacks and things of that nature? But there's kids that are younger, like you said, from 6 all the way up, that the only time they'll ever get a pole position on NASCAR is on Xbox, right?
Yeah.
And they don't mentally think that I can even accomplish this, because other than Bubba Wallace, there's nobody in the sport right now that looks like them. I never forget, I was talking to somebody who's actually in motorsports, and he didn't even realize that Lewis Hamilton was black until he heard the name. He knew who Lewis Hamilton was, but he never really took the time to investigate until he started standing up for social justice, that holy crap, Lewis Hamilton is a black man. So this is why your story is so important, because it gives children hope. Like, I can do it. I can follow his blueprint. I can get the inspiration. And, sometimes when I was playing football or when I was down and I was crying about some of the things I was going through in sports, I would listen to interviews about Muhammad Ali and say, this is what he had to do. I need to knuck up, right? Come on, get up, get your ass off your shoulders. Let's go. You know, it's time to go. So with that, where do you see the future of just motorsports when it comes to, you know, blacks being involved? Because I know I look in the stands and I don't see us, let alone even on the actual track.
Well, you know, Chris, that's the key. There's got to be more of us represented on the racetrack. You know, we have a lot more representation than we traditionally had in the pits. I see a whole lot of us, not a whole lot of us, but more of us as crew members, right? Jackmen, you know, tire changers, tire carriers, and even engineers, you know, but they're all behind the scenes. The person who gets the glamour, the spotlight, is the driver, right? Until we can see more of us, you know, taking that helmet off and being, you know, interviewed in victory lane or before the race or whatever the case is. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be a hard road to hoe. And that's all dependent upon when is the playing field going to be level. I can't answer that question. I would love to say it's going to be, you know, real soon, but you see it's just the opposition that takes place. It can be done. I'm proof positive right here that it can be done if you have the perseverance, the tenacity, you know, the belief in yourself, the passion. You know, all my stories based on passion. You can make it. It's just tough though. If you think about all the drivers that are out there at whatever amateur level or doing different things, but only 40 drivers start on Sunday, you talk about an exclusive club. That's it, but it can be done. I've done it. Bubba Wallace is doing it now, you know? But there's got to be more guys looking like me, looking like Bubba, before we can really embrace the sport. Because what we do is we cheer for the car, but especially the driver. Most NASCAR fans in particular, it's all about the driver and that driver's personality. Sports car racing is different. Sports car racing is not really about the driver. It's really more about the car and the technology, you know? IndyCar racing, I would say it's 50-50. I would say it's technology and it's the personality of that driver who's driving the IndyCar. But in NASCAR, it's heavily skewed towards the driver. Whoever's out there winning, getting the job done, whoever they can root for in the stands, wear their apparel, wear their gear. We need more looking like us before more of us come out and really embrace the sport. Now, more of us are coming out because of the Black Lives Matter movement and what Bubba has stood up for, and I'm so proud of him, and what Lewis Hamilton has done, even though that's Formula One and that's European by and large. We here in the States really don't follow Formula One racing. I can say I do every race, but anyway, that's another subject. Yeah, until, you know, there's more that look like us that are having the opportunities and taking advantage of them and, you know, getting to the top of the mountain. That means getting that checkered flag and waving it around and doing those interviews and getting that exposure nationwide on, you know, television, you know, ESPN or, you know, Good Morning America, whatever the case is. It's going to be tough sledding. There's just no two ways about it. I mean, we're not going to go out there and root for a bunch of folks that don't look like us. You know, it's typically, I hear folks say, you know, black folks say, it just looks like 40 cars running around in a circle. I can't keep one different, you know, from the next. You know, who's this? What's that? And, you know, then when I bring out people that haven't seen a NASCAR race and I say, okay, this is what you need to look for. This is Bubba Wallace. This is, you know, these are some of the things that are going on. And they can see the strategy and they can see the, you know, how everything's playing out. They're like, wow. And they become immediate NASCAR fans. But I can't go to every city and, you know, whatever, and every, you know, county, whatever, and find everybody to come out there. I've done it a lot. You know, I've done it with the Jack and Jill organization. You know, I was going to do it this past, was it March or May when the Atlanta race was the first one to get canceled on the NASCAR schedule. So that must have been March. I was going to bring a bunch of kids from the 100 out there to Atlanta Motor Speedway to experience NASCAR and set that hook. But then COVID came in, and that was the first race that was canceled by, you know, the COVID-19 pandemic. But I say all that to say that unless you know what's going on, unless you can find somebody you can identify with and root for, it's not going to, you know, grab hold.
Doesn't resonate.
I just hope things change so that it does.
Yep. Yeah, it does. Even for me growing up, I think I told you this story before, you know, growing up in New York City in my younger years, and my dad, I'm running around the house. He would sit down on his couch and I sit down and he's watching NASCAR. I don't know what this is, but I became a huge fan because of Dale Earnhardt Sr. And it completely changed, my outlook on what the sport is, and it got me interested, but it still didn't resonate as much because I didn't relate to who he was, as a person, other than just being one of the best drivers in the history of driving. But now when I have, like, my kids have heroes like you and Bubba and people that they can look at, not only are they dope drivers, but they look like you, it's a completely different feeling that, people don't understand. And it's not racism, it's representation. And it's hard sometimes for people who aren't Black to understand that concept, that it's not racism. We're not pushing you away or saying what you've accomplished isn't significant as a white person or a Spanish person or whatever, but to have somebody who looks like you is massive.
Absolutely.
It completely changed. Like Barack Obama, people are like, oh, you just vote for President Obama, him because he was Black. And a part of it was like, this is a two-part answer. One, you're absolutely right. But two, the way he carries himself. And I believed in his policy. And that's what tied it all together. And it's not being racist that I said I'm voting for him because he's Black. It's a two-part thing. And that's what we need in our sports.
No question. Well, one of the things I want to add as well is that, somebody who played a huge role in, my becoming a race car driver was Willie T. Ribbs. When I was growing up in Northern California, he lived in San Jose. I was living in Oakland, working for Hewlett Packard. And, just about every opportunity during lunch hour I took to go over and meet with him, because he was winning in Trans Am and in IMSA, and he was where I wanted to be. There was nobody else who I could really identify with. But I could identify with Willie T, and he and I, had a great friendship, and he kind of showed me the business end of it, what's really behind the scenes before you see what the finished product is on Sunday on TV. Mm-hmm. Everything that goes into being successful as a race car driver. Because I would have just gone through the school of hard knocks, day after day after day, had, I not been able to, like, learn at the foot of the master. He was doing everything I aspired to do. So I was very fortunate that I had him as a resource. And, I can't tell you how many aspiring Black drivers have come to me through my website primarily, which is woefully out of date. I'll talk about that another time, to try to just get some guidance and some direction in terms of, what do I need to do? How do I get to the point that I can be doing something like what you did? How can I become the next Bill Lester, whatever the case is? How can I become a professional racer? Because they have no clue. They have no idea, right? Because it's not in our community. It's not in our fabric to do it. We love cars. We love going fast, but we don't know how to get there. And there's so many pitfalls. There's so many things that you can do to make a misstep that most of us are afraid to make that first step, And when you realize just how much it costs, going back to that aspect of it all over again, it's insane. Let me give you this example. At the karting level, single digit year, you're an 8-year-old kid or whatever the case is, and you want to run for a national karting championship. That's a 6-figure proposition. Your family, because you don't have sponsorship at 8 years old, your family is putting out over $100,000 for you to run for a national championship in karting at 8 years old. How many Black families can afford to do that on their kid's whim? It's like, well, I want to maybe be a race car driver. Okay, we're going to spend this 6 figures right quick to see if you're good at it. And then, okay, you're good at it. That's another 6 figures the next year, so you can become a multi-time kart champion. It's hard. It is extremely hard. It's like what I did showing up, even though I did some professional racing in sports cars prior to my going into NASCAR at 40, what I did will never happen again, unless you are millionaire, billionaire, and, money's no object, and all you're doing is bringing your helmet and stinking up the field for the most part. You're probably not going to be a successful driver showing up at 40 years old, going out there in NASCAR. So it's tough, and I tell them that, and I just say, listen, they're like, what's the most important thing I should do? It's like, well, if you have a passion for it and you really want to do it, find financial resources. That is number one key, bar none, because you can't have enough money.
That actually brings me to a point, because, like, as you said, the financial burden when it comes to racing is astronomical, especially when it comes down to, like you said, even at a karting level, you're already looking at 6 figures. What about iRacing? That kind of levels the playing field, because you're not out there really buying a car or a cart or anything else. It's literally just, a PlayStation or a computer or something like that. So the cost of getting into the sport isn't really that high. Would you recommend something like that, or how would you?
Question. No question. iRacing is a great platform. I mean, iRacing wasn't available to me when I was, first coming on the scene in the mid 2000s. They had some other games, but they weren't really simulations. And iRacing is a great simulation, so that accelerates the learning curve exponentially. It's, I wish I had that tool when I was, younger. But that's how, aspiring drivers can learn more about what it takes in terms of car control, in terms of what the tracks look like, that sort of thing. But you can't completely mimic what it's like to be in a car. Even though there's motion, seats and stuff like that, and motion simulators and stuff like that, it's not the same. You don't have 140-degree cockpit temperature. I mean, you talk about on a hot day, if it's a 90-degree, 95-degree day with high humidity, it could get to be as high as 130, 140 degrees behind the wheel. I don't care, if you're playing iRacing or not, you don't have your heat in your house up to 130, 140 degrees, and you're not doing it for, with the extreme G's and all the different, things that you have to respond to like you are in real life. But is it a great approximation? No question. I wholeheartedly believe iRacing is a great foundation for an aspiring driver. It'll kind of give you an indication as to whether or not, you really have the it factor. Are you good? Are you good like you think you are? Are you getting spanked, every race you're out there participating in? I mean, are you out there, getting the pole position and leading the pack and lapping people, whatever? Or are you, just basically trying to stay out of people's way? So, yeah, no question, I think iRacing is a great tool, but there's nothing like the real thing, baby.
Oh, I love, like I race. I have a car too, but it's more on the drag side, actually road racing. In specific, and like you said, there's nothing like being in that car and just feeling those G-forces and pulling those gears and just hearing the motor scream. But like drag racing, it's I love it and I hate it at the same time, because as a car enthusiast, it is probably one of the dumbest things you can possibly do, because the better you get, the less time you spend in the car. Like it doesn't make sense, because you're just like, all right, I'm gonna go really, really fast, and I'm like, you're just always chasing that time. It's like, all right, 10 seconds, 7 seconds, 6 seconds. It's just like, hold on, I like driving, I like cars. Why am I trying to shorten my time to be there, like in the car? Like, it doesn't make sense. And it's literally, you wait in the staging lane, you do your pass, you come back, you let the car cool down, and then you rinse and repeat. But it's like, hold on, like I'm doing this for the wrong reasons at this point, because it's like, I like the drive, and now I'm actually looking in and pursuing like doing something road racing, because I like being behind the steering wheel, and I'm to the point where being in the car is so short. Like, I like being at the track, but I don't get to drive.
Yeah, that's funny that you mentioned that you have an affinity for drag racing, because when you look at diversity, drag racing, NHRA in particular, does not have the issues that these other forms of racing have. Why? Because it's way more accessible than these other forms of racing. Anybody can get a car, fix it up, race somebody else from one stoplight or to the next, or one stop sign to the next, whatever. Of course, we are not condoning that sort of thing, but I'm just saying that it's a lot more accessible than going way out there, an hour away to get to a circle track, or an hour away to get to a sports car road racing circuit. It's just not easy, and then what you got to do to make your car legal and proper for those types of environments is so much more difficult than just taking your street car and putting on a few modifications and racing it, so that's why we got, J.R. Todd, Antron Brown, and, NHRA is doing way better than these other series. I mean, I just believe that when it's accessible and the playing field's a lot more level, we can take advantage of it. And that's what NASCAR, for example, really needs to endeavor to do. They need to work on making the playing field more level by encouraging more, sponsors. They have relationships with these corporations to get involved with broadening the net. They need to broaden the net. They just, they're talking about, well, okay, we banned the Confederate flag. I take my hat off to them. I never thought I would see the Confederate flag barred from a NASCAR event. So that was a big step in the right direction. Okay, now what? Crickets.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, at SEMA, I've had some conversations with some of the executives at NASCAR, and when they found out about some of the things that I've done, it's kind of like, well, how can we bring that over to this? And certain things just don't translate over. But, you know, another point that you said, as far as like when we created this organization, me and Sinclair, and, you know, we kind of put that out to the world, a lot of my drag racers crucified me for it. And they were like, oh, well, when I go out to events, I don't see issues. I'm like, well, it says motorsports. The world is a lot bigger than drag racing. And in motorsports, there's way bigger issues than we necessarily have, especially at the type of events that we host and attend, because it's very diverse, you know? So it's kind of like motorsports is such a bigger platform. And there's many more ways the higher up you go into like NASCAR and supercars and things of that nature, where it's easier to push somebody out based on either the color of their skin, their gender, or just socioeconomic situations, right? It's just so much easier. And people don't grasp that. And this is why we have this organization. This is why we enjoy talking to guys like you that have really, I mean, it's a something out of nothing story. It's a Cinderella story that, I mean, and you have, even now, I don't even know how long NASCAR has been around, but just one of four.
I mean, one of four in the last 60 years. And I would say one of, I think there's 7 or 8 of us in the history of NASCAR, which was created in 1948. So I'd say there's only been 7 or 8 black drivers, African-American drivers, to race in the sport.
And this is
at that level. At that level.
At that level, yeah.
Don't get me wrong. There's lots of us. Well, not lots of us. There's more of us at the grassroots level and climbing the ladder. But I'm talking about in terms of racing at the top level, which is Cup.
Yeah.
7, maybe 8. So yeah, it's, you know, they say it's lonely at the top. That's real lonely.
Well, Bill, I mean, thank you so much for this opportunity to really sit and get your story out and be the inspiration that you are, and just put it on another platform. Ladies and gentlemen, his book is coming, Winning in Reverse. It is going to be available everywhere on February 2nd, 2021. I don't even know what year these are now at this point. But you can pre-order it right now on Amazon, on every other platform. You can get it. Make sure you pre-order it now so you don't miss the boat. Sinclair, anything else?
I just have one last question for Bill.
Sure.
Okay.
When you saw yourself on the Cheetos box, did you just say, you know what, I made it?
Cheerios box?
Yeah, man. You know, that's something I never thought would happen in a million years. And I was fortunate enough to have it 2 years running. In 2003 and 2004, I was scaring kids at their breakfast table. You know, I mean, it's amazing. I would have never thought that was the case. I mean, I always held that for guys like, you know, Walter Payton or Muhammad Ali or, you know, whatever. But me, you know, I mean, what did I do? But I'm glad that General Mills thought that I was a great representative for their brand, and that they had some great initiatives, health initiatives that they wanted me to spearhead. And I did that with them, and I was honored to do it. But one of the coolest things was I was in a grocery store one day. This is way back when the cereal was on, you know, on the shelves. And this lady, older black woman, she took the box, my box, pulled it off the shelf. She looked at it, and she just gazed at it. So I came down the aisle, and I stood kind of next to her, and I looked at her, and then she just looked at me like, why is this guy looking at me? Then she looked at the box. Then she looked at me. Then she looked at the box. That's you. And I said, yeah. And she said, I'd be happy to autograph one of those for you. She said, oh, most definitely. I appreciate it so much. So I know the box had left an imprint and, you know, made a difference. And I was very honored to be, you know, able to have my own cereal box. That doesn't happen every day.
And just like that.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being on, man, the legend, Bill Lester. Thank you so much for being with us. And, you know, you always have a seat at our table. And we hope to see you in the future, because it's been great. And I look forward to reading your book.
I appreciate that. It's been my pleasure hanging out with you guys, man. Hope we had some fun, because I sure did.
No, it was absolutely fun. Thank you.
All right, y'all be good.
You
You
too.
too. Thanks,
All right,
Bill.
see you later.